Cannabis Common Sense, the show that tells the truth about marijuana and the politics behind its prohibition.
Welcome to Cannabis Common Sense. We have a very exciting story for you tonight. A fellow who's played music on our show several times, Scott Sky Johnson, was trapped in his house on the Santiam River during these huge forest fires. So stay tuned for Scott Sky Johnson's harrowing tale.
I feel the force.
Well, I would like to welcome Scott Sky Johnson back to Cannabis Common Sense. Thanks for coming on again, Scott. We've got this great version of your song that you played on this show that we're going to run. It's a hemp economy.
A song I wrote back in '87, and it's quite heartening to have it be happening here in, God, has it been that long? Okay, here we go. There is a plant that we all know is illegal, but why that is, I really just don't see. 'Cause it's something that can help us change this path of destruction we're on when we change to a hemp economy. There has been many centuries it has been used to make paper, 4 times more fiber per acre than trees. We could save our ancient forest, it's renewable every year when we change to a hemp economy. You know, 1/4 of all the pesticides and herbicides sprayed on Mother Earth are sprayed there by the cotton industry. Did I mention you can make a finer cloth from its stalk when we change? Why don't we change? Well, the seed has got more protein per pound than any other plant. We could feed it to all of the world's hungry, because it grows like a weed in all 50 states, even builds up your soil when we change to a hemp economy. And the seed has got more oil per pound than any other plant. We could refine it to make cleaner gasoline, reduce pollution from combustion by 80% just by changing to a hemp economy. Well, unlike alcohol, it can reduce your stress, open your mind up along with your vocabulary. A pharmacopoeia, a medicine from glaucoma to pain when we change. Why don't we change? There is a plant that we all know was illegal, But why that is, I never could really see. Because it's something that can help us change this path of destruction. Well, all we got to change, can't you see? Change our reality and change to a happy economy. We got to change. Why don't we just change?
That was great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I love that song.
But you have recently been on television and OPB talking about an incredibly harrowing, life-threatening trauma that you endured in the forest fires. They came to visit you one morning quite recently, and unexpectedly. You were,
I'd have to say it was a series of miracles that led to me even being here talking to you, especially with my wife and cat. We woke up, well, my wife woke up. I would have slept right through this thing and I would be toast right now. My wife has been helping him with his friends with a farm all summer long. And her favorite thing to do is to get up like before dawn, and she gets in the car and she drives to the farm and then watches sunset, or, you know, has sunset at the farm. And so she was used to getting up at like 4 a.m. And so she got up at 4 a.m. and it smelled particularly smoky. And so she went out to the living room to see what was going on, and there was orange coming through the curtains. And when she pulled them back, it was a wall of flames right there. And that's like where our cars are parked in the driveway. And we're kind of, the land has 2 levels. And so the entire upper land was now on fire, and it was coming down the cliffside towards where the house is. Well, the house sits on another cliff. It's like on a little shelf, and then there's another cliff that goes down to the Santiam River, but it's about 40 or 50 feet down there. And we have a little switchback trail. And so by the time she got back into the bedroom, it was already in the backyard, orange flames coming through the curtains in the bedroom. And she was like, "Scott, wake up. We got to go to the river right now." And I was like, "What?" I mean, but I could see the orange flames coming through and it smelled really smoky. It was like, okay, you know, we got to move. Threw on some clothes, was kind of thinking maybe I could get one of the vehicles out. And so I grabbed the car keys, and I knew the cat carrier was out by the cars anyway, because we sort of had this set up, like if there was a fire, you know, I'd grab the guitars and she'd grab the, you know, the priceless heirlooms and the paintings and stuff. And the cat carrier was right out there, so we could just grab the cat and then we could put him in the carrier in the car. But to get now to the cat carrier, that whole hillside is engulfed in flames, and they're coming right at the cars. And it's like, no way I can get even close to one of the cars. But I was able to use the door of the shed to kind of block the flames and fish that cat carrier out of there, and came running back.
Kind of set your clothes on fire, didn't it? You kind of.
Well, I used to. I'm pretty well healed now, but I had a pretty good burn here and here, and you know, some over here. So it kind of got this side of me.
Getting the cat here.
Yeah, you're in such adrenaline rush though that, you know, that part of it I didn't even notice till later. And my wife was like, "Don't go in there." You know, I was like, "We're not going without Tuku. You know, that's our cat. He's, you know, a really beloved companion." And so we got the cat carrier. The cat, by this time, is like completely freaked out because the way we're running around and like, you know,
you can smell it.
It goes running under the bed. And it's like, no way I can get him out from under the bed.
How old is your cat?
How old?
Yeah.
Well, he's about 8, but we've only had him for 2 years. He was a wild cat that kind of adopted us about 2 years ago. Oh, maybe 4 years ago. So he's probably more like 9 or something. But anyway,
So
He's
you
a
had to put him out from under the bed. I know what that's like. I
well.
played that
My
movie.
wife just dove under there. It was like, whoa, she's a lot smaller than I am, boom. And the cat was so surprised because we'd never come under the bed for him. That's his like deep hidey hole,
Right.
that he came running down the hallway. And so I grabbed him. We already had the carrier open, threw him in, went running out the door. And by this time, like the house is on fire. And all we've got is that trail down to the river that's not on fire yet, but it's coming down towards it really fast. And there's these 40-mile-an-hour winds that are blowing, and it's just moving that fire like faster than anything I've ever seen. I've been in close to fires before, and this was like nothing I've ever seen. I mean, there was like 40-foot, 100-foot embers
That
of,
was the thing. It had
showers.
been 20 miles away when you went to bed. That fire was 20 miles away from you, right?
Well, that's what we thought. We'd been
Yeah.
told our buddy was the fire liaison, and he was like, even with these winds, there's a really low risk that's going to get you. And so we kind of went to bed thinking, yeah, we'll be okay. What happened was that the power lines fell down. They didn't shut, even though we lost our power at about 7, which is why we didn't get any notification or anything, because we lose our phones and internet and everything happens when the power goes down. And we're on this weird little shelf, like I was telling you about, that gets no cell reception. So we don't have a cell phone that could have got called. So we had no notification, but apparently the PG&E or the Pacific power lines were what started our fire. And those were just right up on the road. And, you can see how that would come right down towards us, especially in
So,
those.
and the winds were going 40 miles an hour, unlike anything before. It like was snowing up in Colorado, and these winds are blowing out from the
It was
east.
so strange.
It was a
And
weird weather thing. But so you're running toward this disappearing path to you're like 40 or 50 feet above the river, and there's this switchback trail that
my
you
wife
have to go down.
My wife gets around the corner. She was ahead of us because I'm carrying the cat. And she gets around the corner and she says, "Don't come this way. I'm on fire." And then the fire that has got her, I'm thinking, or whatever, comes around the corner and towards us. So me and Tuku we dove over that cliff. It was like the only place not on fire was down that cliff. Uh, and luckily, it was like, I mean, you really can't even have time to think about these things in this kind of situation. You just do what is needed for the moment. And the blackberries and all this stuff that had been growing on the cliff kind of grabbed us and stopped us from, landing at the bottom. But then we're like, 3/4 of the way down and we're tangled in all these blackberries and undergrowth. And I mean, it was just like a mess. And my wife by this time had gotten through the fire and she's like in the river. And she's like, "What are you doing? Come down here," because the fire was like moving down this cliff towards us. Um, I think that might be where poor little Tuku got his whiskers and eyebrows singed off.
So he was inside the cat carrier, but still got singed inside there. And
did.
you your clothes caught on fire too, right?
They never did. I mean, I don't know. I was so blessed. Luckily I had a long sleeve shirt on and I put on some, blue jeans or whatever. And these slip-on shoes. Now, unfortunately, in that tangle up, my shoe came off. And so I was like, I am not leaving here without this shoe. You know what I mean? And I really needed it. And then the fire came and it got so bright from the fire that I could see my shoe. Like, oh, there it is down there. So I grabbed it, put it on. And by this time I had us untangled. And now we're in the river with Mary Beth. It's freezing cold. The Santiam never warms up, even in the summertime.
Yeah.
And where we live,
even when there are 40 and 50-foot wall of flame around you, it's
the weirdest thing. Yeah, I mean, we could have froze as much as we could have burned in the fire from all the water by the time we got done with all this. But
so once you got, how did you like threw the cat over to your wife down the hill or something and made your way down to the water?
Yeah, it's like when I got close enough to get in, I handed it to her because she was out there already. And then I jumped in and at that point, we looked up and down the river. And it's basically, I mean, literally 100-foot flames on all sides because there's all this old growth that goes up and down the river where we are. And it's on the other side as well. And the house, the one house that we could see in our entire view shed, is now engulfed on the other side, and it's going up in flames. We're kind of watching it.
What happened to those people?
I'm sure they got burned out. We don't know them real well because they're across the river, and you got to go a long way to get to their thing. They only come up
They
probably
didn't, you
3 or
know,
4.
like Georgia Tia.
No, they
No.
basically, this is like a summer home for them. So, and a lot of people in our neighborhood, luckily, it is a summer home. We're one of the few people, or not few, but maybe 30% or something of the road we live on are permanent residents, and the rest are like summer homes on the river. Um, so we're in the river. There's no going on to the shore, but we can't stay in the river because it's 55 degrees and we're freezing, right? And so we noticed this log is just downriver, maybe a quarter mile or not quite even, and it's sticking. It's kind of like up off the ground, and it's sticking into the river, maybe 20 feet out here. And it's up off the river enough that I could get my legs up. I was thinking out of the water, and we needed to get out of the water, and that was the only place we could go to that wasn't on fire.
So you
So we started.
waded up the river for about a quarter mile?
And let me point this out. It's like normally when we jump in the river, we're in front of our house, it's like a plunge and you're like up to your neck in water, and it's a pretty good current. So you got to kind of have a hold of something or you're going to go shooting down the river. Well, right now, or at the moment of the fire, the water was so low. And I don't know if they were trying to keep Detroit Lake open, or we live just below Detroit Lake and there's these dams above us. And so they had been holding the water back for a long time. And so it was the lowest it's ever been or it ever gets. And so the current was weak enough that it didn't take us both out. And it was only probably just above my waist and, a lot higher on Mary Beth because she's shorter. And so she got a lot colder than I did just going through there. But to get down to this log, it was like now a debris field because this fire had been going for a while. Downriver, and so there's like branches and there's trees and there's stuff that's like in the river between us and this log that's too small to get on. It's like debris fields and stuff like that. And so we would go like far enough that we could hand the cat carrier and get stabilized, however, grab a branch or whatever, and be like, okay, hand me the cat carrier and pass it along. And then
At this point, how long had you been down there when you did the movement? How long had you been in the river? Because altogether, you were there like 7 hours, right?
Yeah, it was at least 7 hours. Yeah. I mean, we didn't look at clocks when we left, but it was normally she gets up around 4. So we figure it was 4. And it was noon when the fire rescue guy finally picked us up walking down Highway 22. And so we got to this log. And at one point, we're passing that cat carrier along, and we're just doing it without even, I mean, it's just like we both know that this is what we got to do to survive. And it was such a beautiful moment because I was actually having this feeling like, and I said to her, there is nobody I would rather be doing this with than you. And she was like, well, that's kind of romantic, but here we are surrounded by flames and passing this cat. And we had a good laugh over it later. But I really felt that, and it really was the concert of the two of us and what we knew and how we have survived and lived in the woods for so long and, have had similar things to teach us and whatnot that is the only reason that we're here. And so we got to this log, and Mary Beth was kind of able to sit up on it with her legs pulled up. And then I moved up on it close enough to the shore to kind of get my legs crossed underneath and out of the river. And we just sat on that log, and whenever these winds would blow, you'd have to like completely hide your face. And I mean, it was like dangerous. I got tons of little burns all up and down, even with the shirt on.
With cinders.
Pretty much, yeah. And like it was swirl. So it was mostly going east. But it was, mostly come from the east going west, but they would do weird things too. So you really had to keep your eyes open.
How long were you on that log? Approximately.
We figured we were on that log for hours and hours because basically every time one of those swirls would come, the end of our log that was still connected to shore would start on fire. And so I would have to, luckily, I could reach my hands down far enough to the river to scoop water onto the stuff that was at least
So
closer
you kept
to the
putting
shore.
out the fire to stop the log that was keeping you out of the water that would have killed you if you got to sit in it, really.
And then this is even like we noticed there was this tree and it was a live tree and it was maybe 60 feet high, pretty good size, probably a big leaf maple or something like that. And it wasn't on fire at the bottom and it wasn't on fire at the top, but in the very middle of this tree was this raging fire. And I don't know if had been a crack that these embers had gone into or, some kind of sap there. I don't know what started that fire, but it was just maybe like 10 yards down the river from us. And we're looking at it and we're going, I don't know how long this is going to last with this fire going, halfway up it. This is an oddest thing I've ever seen. And when those winds would blow, it like blow out like, shooting blow flames out of the middle of this tree.
It's like the famous exploding tree of Trump or something.
It was the weirdest thing I've ever seen. And then sure enough, within, however long, it's like timeless out there, but seemed like an hour or two, that tree from that point came crashing down. Boom. And it was like, okay, that was like 10 yards away. And we started looking around and we realized that
during this whole time, your cat is in its box, right? He's in this little cat box.
The cat, I'll tell you, the cat was such a sweetheart. He basically went to sleep. Well, here's what happened. We're on that log and we're like, even if we can get back onto shore at some time, we've now got, this 50-foot cliff and then another 50-foot cliff to get up to just to get to the road. And it's all, just raging fire in every single direction. And it's like, giant 30-foot flames on everything. And so you're kind of sitting there going, even if we stay on this log, how are we going to get out of here, and in the midst of that, my wife starts singing this song, and it's this old circle song that actually I have since heard from the writer of this song that they want to meet us. So I would say at some point I'll probably
song go. Sing it for us, Scott, if you don't mind. You're a singer.
You gotta humble yourself in the sight of the fire. You gotta bend down low and humble yourself in the sight of the fire. You gotta know what it knows, and we will lift each other up. Higher and higher we will lift each other up. And then there's another verse, and actually there's a million verses, but the two that we sang were, you gotta humble yourself in the sight of the water. You gotta bend down low and humble yourself in the sight of the water. You gotta know what it knows, and we will lift each other up. Higher and higher we will lift each other up. And doing that, and we couldn't do it for very long because when those embers would come flying, you'd have to close your mouth and shut your eyes and shield your face. But that calmed the cat, like so. And the cat was pretty good all along. But whenever I'd look in there, he was just sleeping, which really helped because had he been freaking out, and it would have just made it a much different experience. So that tree comes crashing down. There's this. And we know that above
song too, man. That is so cool. Wow, thank you for singing.
I was so amazed that she came up with that, and it so changed the energy from like we are certain death to, hey, this is a spiritual experience we're having here. This is like, transformation, and if it's us being transformed into fire, well, or if it's us perishing in the water, because we got so cold from doing that long trip down to the log, and we weren't really drying because we weren't close enough to those flames, to get dry from them. But every time those 40-mile-an-hour winds would come, you just start shivering, and it was like so weird to be shivering from the cold and having 30-foot flames right in front of you. So, but that song kind of shifted the energy. But when that tree came down, we looked up above us and realized there was another tree that, even though it wasn't at the fire on the bottom or at the top, it was on fire in the middle, and it was kind of like gonna fall on us. Um, and so we knew it was time to leave. And we were also getting, I've been so many hours, this log was only like yay big, and your butt starts getting really sore. And my legs had to be crossed to keep from being in the water, and they were getting really sore. And it was kind of like, if we're going to move, we got to move like now, because, you just get exhausted. And with the tree as a threat, it was kind of like, okay, this is the time. By this time, the water had gotten so full of debris and branches and fallen whatever that you couldn't even tell. It looked like land. But when you'd step on it, it'd be like this thick of debris. It was just like, well, it was all the like stuff that was blown, because there was leaves blown off and branches coming down, and just a ton of debris really in the water. And so getting through that was even more difficult than the first time, because if you didn't know, we were having to like go over piles of things that were underwater and you wouldn't know exactly what it was. But we managed to get to these other two logs that were a little closer to shore, but the fire wasn't quite as intense now, because it slowly does burn everything up, you know what I mean? And so the big stuff is like now kind of gone, even though there's probably still, hundreds of trees within sight that are still burning. All the undergrowth and whatnot, it wasn't like raging like it was, right? Yeah. And so we were able to get a little closer to shore on this log, and there was no trees above it, which was like, oh, this is a big plus. So we're probably going to be okay here, except this log was on fire on both ends. It was on fire on the one that was connected to shore, and it was on fire on the branches that were out here over the river that were still exposed. And so as we were going by, I was able to take a bunch of that debris stuff, which was perfect for putting out fires, because it's big wet piles of leaves and stuff, and dump it on the one that was on the end of it on this end. And that suppressed it. It didn't put it out, but it stopped it from, raging or whatever and going to consume the log we're on. And then the other one was so involved that even though I threw tons of that stuff on it, it would just like dry it out and keep burning it. And there was this deep crack of just like flame, and using that debris, I was able to kind of like pile it up, and then I could push it like down in that crack, which didn't put it out, but it was enough to stop it, or not, slow it down. So now this felt like it wasn't going to consume it. So then we sat on that log for what seemed like hours again. And it just kind of, flames like slowly died down and slowly died down. It was kind of one of those things where, there's just nothing left to burn.
It's burned.
Yeah. And so at one point, it's like, maybe 20 smoldering trees and just a bunch of embers everywhere. And Mary Beth was a lot colder than I was, because she got her top wet as well as her bottom, and she was in her pajamas. And so she decided she was going to venture onto land, because out on the river, those winds were still whipping along, and every time they'd come, we'd be like shivering. And it's going to be, at least we'll be out of the wind. And she was just going to look and see what was going on there. It was enough to, die down. So she ventured on, and I hear her say, "There's a warm boulder over here." And so Duke and I are like, "Oh, well, we're going to check that out." And so we got on land, and sure enough, I mean, it was all embers underneath us, but you could walk on it. I mean, it wasn't going to burn you. And there was this boulder, like, 4 feet across or whatever. And it had been warmed by the fire so much that it wasn't like super hot, but it was just this really nice warmth. And she's like all on it, just like, oh man, a warm boulder. And so we put Tuco on top of it, and we're kind of reconnoitering, and we're like, okay, what are we going to do? Because the idea of going through a bunch of burned forest, even at this rate, there's stuff like coming down and branches. It's still a forest fire happening. It's just not the raging one that it was. And the winds are kind of dying down, but they're still there. Every once in a while, there'd be one come, and then things would flame up again and be like, ah. But we realized that where we are now is like right directly below our house. And there was this tree, thank you, tree, again, probably another big leaf maple that had survived, or its trunk was still intact. I'm not sure it's going to survive because we got out there, and I'm not sure if any of the trees are going to survive. It was so hot. But anyway, that's another story. But it had this root that it was coming down the cliff. You know, this is like the 40, 50-foot cliff below, like directly below our house. And we're now looking at it, and we've never seen it from the, because it's always been, covered in blackberries and, thick brambles, and you really can't tell what's going on here. But it's a pretty flat level, and then the cliff is pretty straight up. And it's like not a rock cliff, it's like a rubble cliff. So, and the fires really loosened things. So, like, there was boulders rolling down and stuff like that we had to kind of pay attention for just from heat. But there was this root, and it came down almost like the tree was like 10 feet down from the top, and then the root came down to probably like 10 feet above where we were. And I thought, I can kind of scramble up this cliff enough to get a hold of that root. And if I get a hold of that root, I can use it to climb up to get to the tree. And if I get to the tree, I got the 10 feet, I can scramble up that 10 feet to get to the top. But we didn't know if we got to the top, if that would be good or not, because that's where our house is, and it could be in raging still, or it could be completely block the road, or so we just don't know what's going on up there. But we do know that any other direction besides just straight up here at this 50 feet, it's going to be like we're doing like miles through this forest because of the way we're going to have to do a cliff somewhere. So at least we know this cliff, and we know about where it's going to come up. So I get on that root and I'm climbing up, and it's like probably about 20 feet up, or far enough to do some damage if I fell. I realized that I didn't have an option now, because there was no way I could like gently get down. I was going to have to go down. So that really spurred me on, and there I found all these little tiny roots and stuff that I was able to like kind of dig out and then use as a handhold, and I managed to get on top of that tree. And then sure enough, from there I was able to scramble up, got up to where our house was, and it was like a moonscape. It was so weird. I mean, we had this lush, it was a beautiful, beautiful, we were so blessed. We've been there for 20 years, since 2000. And it was just this magical place. Big trees and roadies and gardens and decks, and it was gone. It was like flat. I mean, there was like, you could see the pier blocks where the decks had been, and you could see a little bit of the foundation of the house, and there was a twisted roofing. We had metal roofing and everything just everywhere, and the chimney was still there, but the appliances were all like sideways, and it was just, and the refrigerator was like melted. It was like, whoa, this is just like gone. And then the whole land was like really flat and weird. I mean, it was like I did not recognize my own land I'd been on for 20 years. But I did see that the driveway was right there and that I could get to it. I was surprised how close it was, because I'd never seen it without the vegetation. It was like, geez, that's the driveway right there. I can get to that. But I'm looking down this cliff and I'm wondering, well, that took like all of my 6'5" reach to get to these roots and get to this place. And there's just no way these guys are going to get up here, especially the cat.
What's your wife, cat, or down? What's your wife's name?
Mary Beth.
Mary Beth, right. You said it a couple times, but I want to be sure. I know Tuku now. Mary Beth, so.
Tuku, yeah. And they're on the warm rock, so I mean that's a good thing. At least they're not freezing anymore. But I'm realizing there's no way that this is going to happen without a rope. And so that means I've got to leave them and go up to Highway 22, where I imagine there would be like fire people and I don't know what. I thought some kind of rescue effort, something, yeah. And
Get
so
down.
I make my way up to Highway 22, which was a bit of a walk, or walk. I was actually kind of running because I didn't want to leave them down there because I didn't know if it was going to flame back up. Or I mean, it was kind of one of those not a great situation to be just down there, just anyway. Um, but I get up to Highway 22 and our road, and it's like a ghost town. I mean, you could tell this had been evacuated like hours ago, and nobody was anywhere. There was no occupied houses, and most of the houses were all in flames. Um, the rest area that's right next to our land was completely deserted. There was I'm just picturing fire trucks at least there, but there was nothing. And then I got kind of up on Highway 22, and I'm looking up and down, and we found out later it was closed for like 40 miles in both directions, from Detroit all the way to Staten or something. But it was like empty. And so I'm thinking, God, I need a rope. Where am I going to find a rope? And this across the street neighbor of ours, one of his outbuildings was engaged in flame, and he eventually lost his house, but his house was still partially there. And he had this carport standing that had a trailer in it, and on the trailer was this ATV, like he'd take it out four-wheeling and stuff. And so I thought to myself, well, maybe there's a rope in there. And I'm like desperate enough to be going through this guy's garage or whatever, I'm looking for a rope any place. And so I'm combing around, but it's pitch black. I mean, it's like as black as can be, and then it's smoke as well. But it's all orange. It's the weirdest, odd lighting. And so you can't see a thing. So I'm kind of feeling around on this thing, and it's like just empty. There is no road.
Something to go down that 50-foot cliff and save your wife and cat.
Exactly. I need something. And so as I'm groping around on this thing, I realize it's got these tie downs that are holding it to the frame of this trailer. And I thought, tie downs, that's a rope. And so I started following it to the end, and I found the little latch thing and was able to kind of loosen it up enough to get it off the frame of the trailer and get it loose. And it's like, okay, this is it. And then I found another one. It was like, okay. And then I kind of lengthened them out as far as they could go. And I'm tying them together as I'm running back to the cliffside. But I throw them down, and it's like, there's no way it's going to reach. But if I climbed back down to that tree, that was 10 feet down, and then I'd kind of put my arm as far down as I could, holding on to the tree, it was just the right length to tie Tuku's cat carrier to. And so I was able to pull him up to where I was on the tree, and then I could kind of push him up to the top. And then my wife started working on getting up to that first root. And because she was going to need that tree to climb up, so I had to be out of that zone because that was the only place to stand to get to the top anyway. And so she is now, so I climb up again to the top with Tuku. So we're both at the top, and she's actually got to that root and has climbed herself up enough that the rope now from the top will reach her. And so, she climbs up with the rope, and we get to the top. And I swear it was like the first time in what turned out to be 8 hours or whatever that we knew we were going to survive, or we felt like it was looking really doubtful right from the get-go that we were going to make it through this. And it was that moment of kind of like, wow, we are here and the cat's alive. I mean, we're all here. And so put the cat on
Right
my
at your own
shoulder.
property, you're right where your house is, or
Oh
what?
yeah, the house is toast. My studio is completely flattened to the ground.
That's it. You're a musician. You played music on our show many times. You're also a woodworker, right?
I'm a
And you
woodworker.
had tires there. They were were your tires burned away?
Oh, the the cars got so hot that the aluminum metal in the tire rims is like in puddles down below it, and they are just hulks. I mean, it's like the wire frame of the seat is like what's left inside, and they're gone, those cars. And then the studio, which was All of my brother who passed away in 2005, he was a drummer. We were actually in bands for a number of years. But I got all of his percussion. He was a percussionist drummer for, 30 years. And so he had drum sets and congas and congolitos and bongos and timbales and every kind of percussion thing you could imagine that we all inherited. And that went into the studio. And then recently I had because I already had a drum set, so I have two drum sets in there, and I brought down all this stuff from my storage, thinking it was time to move all this. So there was like antique snare drums and all this stuff that was things I'd been accumulating musically for many years. And then there was the PA and the bass amp and the 2, 3, 4
Just
guitars.
tens of
Nine
thousands.
guitars, basses, slide
So you probably,
guitars.
about for $500,000 of just belongings, right?
Well,
Like
that's just the studio. Some of that stuff is irreplaceable. I mean, I hand built
you'll never
that.
get. Yeah.
That Ovation guitar was a one of a kind in the world because I put that computer chip in it and created its sound. I don't think there's another one like it. I mean, I could probably recreate it, but I couldn't find one. You know what I mean? Um, Anyway, then up above was the woodworking shop, and that had all my shop tools and God, like years and years worth of lumber that I'd been saving for that fine woodworking project, yew wood and maples and purple heart and black walnuts and then there was enough lumber up there to build a whole fine woodworking shop because I sort of had a storage building and an outdoor pavilion. Um, but I'd always been meaning to build like the third shop, which would have been the fine woodworking shop. And so there was all the lumber in piles there to do that. And when I went up there, I couldn't even find the big shop machinery. I mean, it was like I had things like the big giant lathes and stuff that were like all metal. And it's like, I mean, I guess it could be like somehow in the ground there or something. But I mean, I didn't want to go through it too much. We just wanted to, because we've only been up there once. We could only just get up there on Monday because it was shut off till then. We tried, a couple of weeks ago.
About 5 days ago.
About 5 days ago was the first time we actually got in to see it.
This happened, about 3 weeks ago now, right?
Yeah, it was Tuesday, so a little more than 3 weeks. Or what is today? I guess I don't even know.
As we are recording this, it's the 3rd of October.
Okay, I believe it was the 7th. So we're going on 4 weeks, I believe, on Tuesday at this point. But anyway.
So you lost everything, and you're there by your house at the top of the cliff, and you got to walk out, right?
We did, yeah. We walked up to 22. Here's a little funny story. It's like we're walking along, and it's it's kind of like it looks like Armageddon out there. You know what I mean? Because it's like black sky, orange light everywhere. There's forest fires, still raging in all directions around us. We're walking down Highway 22, and I've got like the cat carrier on my head at this point. And we probably only got, luckily, maybe a half a mile or a quarter of a mile. And we see this light way off in the distance. It's like a flashing light, and it's coming towards us. And we're like, oh, thank God. It was like, we didn't know how far we were going to have to walk, you know what I mean? And we were dead tired from all that time. But it felt so timeless. And so the guy stops at, well, are you guys, okay? He gave us water immediately, which was good because we were just really dehydrated. And got us into his vehicle to warm us up. And we looked at the clock and it was like 11:58. And I was like, is that the right time? Because it was pitch black. You know what I mean? So we had still kind of thought it was nighttime and we hadn't been out there that long. But geez, you figure 4 to noon. I think that's 8 hours. It feels like it feel like hours. You know what I mean? So that made sense, but it was just so woo. And then he was the first guy into the canyon that was looking for all the missing people, and we were on his list because we were knowing that we couldn't be notified because nobody could get through our line from the power out and whatnot. And so when we gave him our names, he was like, "Man, am I glad to see you guys because you're on my list as the missing people here, you know." And then a bunch of really sweet first responders and policemen and various people kind of took us from checkpoint to checkpoint. And we didn't exactly know where we were going to go. But my wife had been working on this farm all summer. And so when we got a cell phone, she called our friend who owns this farm. And she said, "Oh, yeah, come on out here. I'll pick you up in Salem." And so we finally, the last guy drove us basically all the way into Salem, where our friend could pick us up. And we've been staying on this farm ever since, which has been a real blessing because it's been such a nice way to just, it's like we got no TV, we got no Wi-Fi. It's like they're really.
You got a cat in a cat box, right? And the clothes on your back.
But no, in what I'm saying is it's been kind of nice to not have that stuff.
Yeah.
We've just been able to kind of focus on having the feeling come up of like, oh, that guitar I was talking about. But then you go, thank you, guitar, for all the time that you were in my life. Thank you for the gift that you gave me of learning and whatnot, how to do this. And then I release you because it is not coming back. You know what I mean? And then you do that just like kind of over and over as you remember. Like one of the hardest things for me is my brother was this fantastic artist, painted as well as a drummer. He painted all of his life, and he had all of these paintings that everybody was just knocked out by. And I had always had these intentions of somehow promoting his paintings or selling them or maybe doing an exhibition or some kind of something with them. And they're like toast now. I mean, they're all of those paintings. There was probably hundreds of paintings.
You have photos of them?
Well, I never put anything in the cloud. And if I had a ton of photos of hundreds of them anyway, or 100 or more on
Prince,
my
time, we're old guys. Kids don't remember, film and getting photos developed in a long process. Every time you snapped your shutter, it used to cost $1 to take a photo.
That's true. Yeah, all of that is amazing. But basically, our iPad, the iMac, everything that had all of that. And here's what's really interesting is I've been hunkered down all winter doing these albums. And so I've recreated my whole second album that I never really quite released because it felt like a little rushed. And so I started redoing all the stuff on it and came up with a second version of it that will be coming out as soon as I can get this thing recovered. But all of that.
So,
then
if somebody wants to find your music online, and how would they find that? It's out there on. I've listened to some of it. It's on YouTube, right?
Well, everything is so out of date. I've been planning on doing this recording and then updating everything, right? Because I've got my second album, which is called Double Takes, is coming out in a brand new version as soon as I can get this CD from my sister. Luckily, she's got the only copy right now. And there's an album of what I'm calling covers, which is just tunes I've been doing of other people's for years.
Do you have a website for your music?
Well, it's scottskyjohnson.com, but again, this is like,
it needs to be updated. But it's better than nothing. I mean, if somebody
it is
wants
better than nothing. It can give you a little old background.
GoFundMe page out there, and I learned a lot from reading that about the ordeal you went through and the updates on that. Do you know the address for that? It's GoFundMe.com/
I believe it is Scott Sky Johnson. Scott Johnson, maybe. I think
we'll get it. And
Scott Johnson's come up, but you can tell it's me because I'm playing my white guitar.
We'll figure out a way to put it up on the screen somehow so that and it's and it's raised some money, not anything like the amount of what you've lost. But you have said how grateful you are and how this has been a freeing experience, right? It's like you're you're not tied down by all this stuff anymore. That's what you said before we started.
I had been kind of worried about having too much clutter in my life. Because, like I said, I had all these building materials I'd accumulated, and guitars and extra drum sets, and I mean it was just like a lot of stuff. And I was trying to kind of prune down. I'd been trying to sell some stuff through Craigslist, and it was like we've just got to move some of this stuff. And so maybe be careful what you ask for, because I would not wish that on anybody. But boy, did that take care of that problem. It was like, whew. And then the other thing it kind of did, and I remember saying this to Mary Beth when we were sitting on that log, is it's kind of like, this really puts that COVID thing in perspective here in terms of like what's dangerous and what's not dangerous. So not that I don't still wear a mask when I go into a store and whatnot, but it's sort of like that level of threat has gone down to like 0 or maybe 1 on a scale of 100, and the fire is like 100.
Yeah, a 100-foot wall of flames surrounding you seems a lot more awesome, the terrible awesomeness than anything else you could face in life, I think.
Well, and it made me realize that we are taken care of. You know what I mean? The fact that we survived that and made that through that. And we made all the right decisions, and it was all split second timing and intuition and all of that. But I think without some angels helping us or something, I would have never made it up that cliff or found that rope. I mean, it's so many weird little things.
Our
And
land
waking up early
without a broken bone,
Yeah,
I mean, your back jumping off that thing, man.
Or Mary Beth got some pretty, not real bad, but like some secondary burns when she got on fire going down the thing.
She got some blisters.
Well, it was a little more than blisters, but we've been working on that, and she's fine now. She's completely healed. She's a real fast healer. I got, like I say, a lot of first-degree burns, but nothing enough to really go to the hospital for or anything like that. So just that is incredible. I think Tuku got the worst of it by getting his whiskers and eyebrows singed, but even those are growing back. He's like almost half of his whiskers are almost back, so he's cruising.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on our show like this, and we're going to put your songs in here. I think maybe, thanks for coming on, and just God bless you. I'm glad that you and Mary Beth and Tuku survived. Unfortunately, I know you knew Georgia Tia as our who died there.
He was a neighbor of ours. He was right there in the neighborhood, close by.
At Opal Creek. I know my kids actually went to the Opal Creek Education Project from their school in Portland, and I stayed there with them, and my mother stayed there with our daughter for a few days. So all of that's gone too. So much has changed, but it just shows how everything changes, and that's the only thing you can count on is change.
Well, a funny little thing about this is we always just loved our land. I mean, it was like it was home. You know what I mean? It always felt like home. But one of the problems with our land was we never had southern exposure. And so, you really couldn't do a garden. You could do flowers and roadies. And I mean, there was a lot of stuff you could do, but growing food was not really an option. So when we went to visit, we were up kind of on that second level of the land where the shop had been. And we're realizing, oh, wow, we've now got a southern exposure because all of those trees in the south are like gone.
So let me ask you, are you planning on rebuilding on your property? I'm glad you brought that up.
I really don't know. It's such a weird story because.
What about hemp? You could rebuild the hemp.
Yeah, I did. We thought we had insurance on our property, and looking like we don't. And it's a really fishy, odd story about how we had it when our friends owned the insurance agency. And then as soon as they sold it, we didn't have it. But nobody told us about it, although they say they did. But, it's just not something I would have
it started from that electrical line up there. I know in California, the electric company has had to pay off for a lot of the destruction caused by their power lines going down.
This is too
All right.
too cool. You're on TV.
Right.
He came over to say hi.
Good, good. Well, I plant a seed, maybe rebuild with hemp. You've got a lot of choices in this world, so that's one of.
I feel like it's a whole fresh thing that we are doing, and it's like it almost feels like there's a new world emerging, and we're just like really obvious to us because everything is gone, so we really can't have our old world anymore. But I feel like it's a societal thing. Like it's not just us.
It is time. It's
I
time
mean, there's
for
half of
transformation. There's a lot of things that are messed up with this world, and we don't have much time to fix what little bit we have left for future generations,
I'll tell you, Paul, the outpouring of love and generosity that we have received from our family and friends and even total strangers has been the most heart-opening, unbelievable, wonderful thing that you could ever possibly imagine. And my wife has now started calling everybody walking angels. Well, there's another walking angel. My goodness, it's really sweet. And then the other thing she said, she's so wise, but she wouldn't be here because she doesn't want to do these kind of things. But she says generosity is the new culture. Greed is gone. Greed as the culture is no longer, it's not possible anymore. We just can't have a greedy culture anymore. We got to move to a generosity culture. And I think that's like profound, and it fits this time so well because that greed thing is so up for so many people. It's a big wake-up call. It's kind of like, what are we really doing here? What's really important? And when it boils down to it, it's the relationship and the love and the connection that we have with others that is our treasure. And you could have $1 bazillion, but you would never have feelings like we have gotten from, people giving us like a bar of soap or, just all these weird little things. It's like, oh man, they don't have anything, and here they're giving us this, So that's all I got to say. I think that's a good way to wrap it up.
Well, that's a great way to end it here.
Bless
Thank
you for
sharing your incredible story. Scott Sky Johnson.
It's a gift to be here.
And
Enjoy
Mary
it.
Beth and Toku. Our prayers are with you. Thank you.
Big love to everybody out there. Thank you. I hope.
We went a little longer than I anticipated.
Yeah. Cut it down.
It sounds like it's a whole show on its own.
I hope you enjoyed that exciting story from our friend Scott Sky Johnson. We'll be back with a regular edition next week in this pandemic, so stay tuned and help us restore hemp. Good night.